Just a quick intro to this video. I initially recorded it. I didn't really talk about the pet factor in this a little bit, so I'll add this at the start before I get into the actual video. I think it's very obvious that if Pep hadn't mentioned that comment where he said, I want to see more fans at the Southampton game, this wouldn't be an issue. The only reason it's an issue and anyone cares about a Champions League group stage game being a little bit maybe undersold, even was, is because Pep mentioned it. So therefore, it's an excuse for everyone to jump on the Emptihad train. I wish Guardiola wouldn't talk about attendances and stuff like that. I don't think he realises that actually sometimes it probably does more harm than it does good. I think he thinks it helps, but it doesn't help Pep. It really doesn't, mate. There's a lot of nuance to there. You're a very fucking good manager, and I love you to bits for it, but genuinely, it doesn't help. It doesn't. It just doesn't. Either way, that's the context I need to add there. It's frustrating. As soon as I saw those comments last night, head in hands. Because that's how these things unfold, unfortunately. Anyway, here's the video. So you'd never guess Manchester City played out a 6-3 thriller last night with 9 goals in the Champions League, would you? You'd never guess, because no one seems to care about that. And all anyone wants to talk about is any salacious little tiny bit of gossip they can to cause a little bit of outrage and a little bit of frustration and a little bit of banter. Just content, isn't it? I didn't want to talk about this on the video. I really didn't, because I find it ultimately utterly tiring. I think there's only one thing more tiring than attendance debates in football, and that's finance. Anyone talks about spreadsheets in the context of football can get the fuck out, as far as I'm concerned. It's boring. I want to talk about football. I want to talk about Grealish scoring wonderful goals, Foden. I want to marvel at Messi. I want to watch intricate, delightful football from newly promoted teams. I want to talk about football and things that are absolutely genuinely interesting, not fucking counting seats and spreadsheets. But today has been an absolute shit show on the internet. Another day of shitness on the internet. Talking about Manchester City and attendances. It's always Man City, isn't it? It's always, of course, exaggerated. I mean, there's an element of truth occasionally in some of these things, but it's always exaggerated. It's always exaggerated for reasons. It's never really in good faith. It's always pretty much in banter. You know what I mean? They're just, City got no fans, you know, as if people like myself don't exist, you know, who have been watching the club for 30 odd years, you know. We all know it's not true. City do, of course, have fans. They've been to these games, so City fans have been there, but that's not the point. It never is the point. And that's why I get so tired of this, because it isn't about a good faith discussion. It isn't about a point that anyone's trying to make. It's entirely for the clicks. It's entirely for the audiences, and it's entirely for the listenership views. Of course, TalkSport dived into this, and of course Rent a Fucking Clown, Jordan Bloke, whatever he's called, is talking about, City should have loads of fans because they're meant to be a big club and all this kind of stuff. And of course it's tiring. I'm tired of this absolute nonsense that surrounds this debate, this idea that Manchester City fans, or fans of any club for what it's worth, should be embarrassed because they don't pour every single pound and every single moment of their lives and all the money that they earn back into a $1 billion industry or whatever. That the idea that we should somehow feel embarrassed about that is tiring, and to be frank, it's kind of immature. I am tired of this clickbait nonsense. I am tired of fans using this as some way to beat Manchester City. Like, why is the idea... It's like going around and going, I've got a nicer car than you. I've got more friends than you. I've got more money than you. My clothes are newer than you. We've got more fans in my club. It's the exact same train of thought. The idea that because you have more of something, that you're therefore more valid as a person or as an entity, or that somehow should diminish the enjoyment or the pleasure that one person should take from it. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. I mean, we know this in any form of life. It's just dick measuring and genuinely immature nonsense. And I'm so tired seeing that intelligent, reasonable adults thinking this is a debate that we should be having right now. There are many reasons potentially why, you know, a fan might not be able to go to a game. If we're being totally honest as well, the pictures are on the screen right now. The attendance was perfectly fine. I wasn't there last night for personal reasons. I wasn't there because I chose not to. Financially, I know it was a cheap game, but I'm going this weekend instead, and I'm going to Wickham. I have to choose my games. I have my own personal reasons. I can't get to every game. I make YouTube videos. Sometimes for me, financially, it's better to be here. That is just life. That is my life. You fucking live your life. But the point is, everyone has their own reasons. And the attendance last night was actually, it was fine. It was solid. It may have been a little bit quiet every now and then, but if you take 3,000 or 4,000 away fans out of the equation and they don't travel, you probably do get a weird atmosphere, but that's fine and that's normal. But the bit that really bugs me is this idea that clubs and fans are only worth their coin if there's more of them. They're only worth being mentioned or being applauded if there's a lot of them. It's just this really weird, silly construct. We all talk about protecting non-league football, but at the same time, we have a go at Man City for not having the most fans. Like, which is it? You know, are we allowed to have fans, or we're now, is there a certain threshold that we're allowed? It's the plastic paradox. At the same time, we're castigated for apparently only having glory fans, and we only existed since 2008. Yet at the same time, we're told we haven't got fans, and actually, because we don't have hordes and hordes of overseas fans coming over to fill in those seats when the locals can't attend, that somehow makes us a bad thing. And I've got no problem, whoever wants to support Manchester City. I have no genuine problem. I don't give a shit. I worked at Levi's in Manchester Arndale for a while, and this is not criticism, it's merely an observation because I couldn't care less. When Manchester United played at home, we had loads and loads of Scandinavian and Irish fans in who came to see Manchester United, who travelled over the weekend. We would literally staff differently if United were playing at home, knowing that the tourists would come over and spend lots of money in Levi's. I didn't care. I didn't care less. That is their prerogative as fans. They can do what they want. But the point is, they had that. Manchester City don't have that. We don't. I'm not bothered. We're growing as a club. That's fine. And yeah, that'll take time. These things do take time to have generations of fans become. But the idea that somehow Manchester City are lesser of a club because they have that very thing, they don't have that very thing that other clubs do, that we're castigated for apparently being that we don't have, is such a weird paradox to the point where it's just dumb. And I'm so tired as well of this idea from major people like TalkSport. Don't fucking listen to it. It's absolute nonsense. This idea that somehow we should have to answer to this, that fans should have to answer to this. It's immature, man. I'm not sure if you've noticed of the past year and a half, but we've been in a global pandemic, a global recession. People are keeping the money closer to the chest. And maybe some people don't want to spend as much money. Maybe some people are reconsidering their priorities for football. Maybe actually, there's an element of Man City fans where football doesn't feel as essential as it used to. I don't talk for every City fan. I'm not going to pretend to. But I understand why RB Leipzig, a team that literally didn't exist until recently, quite literally, doesn't incite intense emotions and fervour amongst the watching faithful who were there. Of course it won't. Of course that game will be relatively flat and dead because, well, there's no jeopardy. That is the problem with supporting Manchester City these days, is that there's very little jeopardy. When there's a big game and maybe there's an actual story there, yeah, of course. The best atmosphere I've ever seen in my life has been at Manchester City games. Like the City-Liverpool game, the 2-1 in the 18-19 campaign back in January 2019, I think it was phenomenal. It was genuinely incredible because there was a story there. There was there was something for the fans to get their teeth into, to get their claws into, but there wasn't any for that RB Leipzig. It was fun. The fans turned up, they enjoyed the game, but there's no angle there. I'm not saying there has to be an angle, but I guess the point is, it's very easy to sit and watch Pep Guardiola side and just go through the motions and enjoy the football, cheer when a goal happens. But that's City fans, man. We're not the loudest, but we are cynical, we're nice, we're friendly, we're approachable, we're affable, and we have a relatively older fan base as well. And I don't think there's any shame in that either, because those fans were there watching when we're back in the old third tier. But we're not the loudest in the world sometimes. We can be very fucking loud if you get us going. But we're happy just to sit there and enjoy the football sometimes, and that's fine. But once again, I hate this idea that there's any negative for not being the loudest or not being the most or not being the most aggressive, or not being the most numerical. Like this idea that we should be embarrassed, that I should feel as an individual, as a Manchester City fan, some collective shame because we don't have the world's biggest fan base, or because we're not pumped up and intensely excited for a game against RB Leipzig. It's just silly. Like, what is your point? What is the point you're making? Like, it's been a global pandemic. Life has changed for many people, and we think we'd all be a little bit appreciative of what we've currently got and not judge others for how they own live their own lives as well. I don't understand this. I'm so tired of the media amplifying this, and to be honest, I was disappointed by Pep's comments as well. But what I will say, I'm not going to go into Pep's comments too much because you never know the context of someone speaking in a second language. It did feel like he was asking for more fans there at the ground. If he meant that, it's just, I would say stick to football in that instance. I would do, Pep. Maybe leave it to the marketing team to deal with this kind of stuff. Maybe just really wants more from the fans. Come on, let's get there. It'll be a big game. It's going to be a tough period of games. Maybe you meant that. I don't know. But either way, I am bored of the media always coming at Man City fans and they're trying to shame us for not having the most and that we have to answer to this. Trying to shame us for not spending every single penny on the club. But the idea that a former Premier League chairman, of course he fucking would say that on TalkSport, would sit here and mock City for being a super club but not selling out their ground. We ignore the fact that grounds often aren't always full of other teams as well. But it's not about that, is it? It's about Man City. It's not the fact that, United can have a game where it's not always rammed, or, Chelsea can, or Inter can, or whatever, or Barcelona can. Look at the fucking Camp Nou these days. But it doesn't matter. It's always about Man City, and we know the true colours there. And I don't know why I'm just adding to the noise and discourse, but I guess the point I'm making is I'm just so tired of adults acting like children. I'm so tired of having to pretend to care, ultimately, or feel responsible about, look, the way I feel. If I was the only one at the Etihad, I would still watch and sit and watch Man City. I don't go there for other people. I go to watch football, and I'm sure you feel exactly the same. And I feel as a City fan base, we need to not feel this weight of expectation or try and control how other people perceive our appearances. Try and worry about how other people perceive our enjoyment of the game. Fuck them all. It's bad faith. It's tiring. It's nothing more than emotional manipulation, and it's just. They don't care or mean it, these people. They are just doing this to get a rise out of Manchester City fans. And they've won, I guess, here right now because I'm sat here talking about it. But I'm just bored. I'm bored of the silly season that is this. I am bored of the nonsense that is this attempt at a discussion. It isn't an attempt at a discussion. I've had bloody journalists messaging me asking my opinions on this. And I know they want me to say something silly. I know they want me to come on and defend Man City. Fuck off. Just fuck off. It's silly. It's childish. It's nonsense. Those fans can spend their money in any way that they want to. They can go to those games if they want to. Yes, Man City don't always sell out midweek sometimes because it's harder. We have a smaller fan base. At the weekend, it's fine. The kids can all go. Midweek, not every family can go. And that's fine. We can't magic up more fans. But if we did, we'd somehow be criticised for that as well. Stop worrying about this stuff. Stop caring about this. And stop being... We're all like, oh, make tickets cheaper. City made them a bit cheaper last night. Decent attendance in the end. It was nice. But instead, actually, what we do is we mock it when clubs do this and use it as a stick to beat the clubs with. Instead of encouraging it, instead of getting together as fans, we just sit there and fucking throw daggers at each other, and we fall for the hook, line and sinker every single time when people like TalkSport, and we fall for that divide and conquer tactics, and we take the hits and they get the clicks, and it's just so immature, and it tires me. It absolutely tires me out, because this idea, stop caring what other people think. Stop it. You don't need validation for your own enjoyment. You don't need it from other fans. They will never like Man City. We are the ones that everyone likes to take the piss out of, and that's fine. The idea that anything we've ever achieved as a fan base doesn't count. The idea that we ever have good attendances apparently doesn't exist. We do. Of course we do. The idea that the fans are somehow disloyal is nonsense, despite everyone admitting that City's fans years and years ago were very good and all this kind of stuff. Look, my honest opinion on the fan stuff, I think City's fans are interesting. I think we're unique and different. I know Manx, we're dour. We sit like that. We like to moan and grumble. We have a lot of old miserable Manx, and I absolutely admire that because my family are like that too, and I will be that in 20 years. I'm getting that way myself, and I'm not calling for it. Maybe we're not the most vocal of fan base, but we do care just as much. Just because we're not shouting there doesn't mean we don't care. We're not London fans. We're not dramatic. We're not Scouse fans who are obsessed with their cult of personality. We are not convinced we are the best in the world. You know what I mean? We're not convinced that we are the loudest. We're not convinced that we are entitled to everything. We're not convinced that. Manchester City fans have come from a very different background, in my personal opinion. We aren't, our fans aren't the same as United fans or Liverpool fans, Real Madrid or Barca fans. We're not actually. Maybe 20, 30 years have been beaten down and struggling for a little bit, which is how I grew up, made us a little bit more humble, and maybe we're just happy to sit and enjoy. Maybe we're not the most aggressive or the most fervent at all times sometimes, but I don't want to be like that. I like City's humility. I like the fact that we are a little bit more chilled. I like the fact that we appreciate good football. And maybe there's an element of we don't I don't know how to. It takes a long time to know how to support a super club. Apparently, supporting a super club, you're meant to kick off if your team aren't in the top four all the time or losing a game. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. So maybe there isn't incessant anger or jeering or intense frustration from the City fans if we're not winning immediately, because we're calm, because we've had it so fucking good over the years. Maybe, actually, just maybe, the City fans are pretty chill and appreciate what they've got. So they're just happy to go and enjoy the football, have a chat with their mate next to it, and go home. And what is wrong with that? That is literally football. That's the essence of football. Football is about entertainment, fundamentally. We're paying to watch billionaire and millionaire people. Some players are probably billionaires these days. We're paying to watch these people, and we can watch it in however way we want to. And I think City fans are an interesting one because, actually, we've spent years being trodden down, and even though we're historically, obviously, a hugely important English club, we are. We haven't had the decades of success that led to United growing so globally during the Sky and the internet boom. We didn't have that, so we haven't got tons of people to ship over from Scandinavia and Ireland and Malaysia or whatever on a match day. And that's not criticism; it's just a fact of life. We haven't got coaches of people driving up from London. You go to London, you ask around, it's a United fan you're going to meet more than most often. And that's not a criticism, it's just a point. It's something interesting. City don't have that. Does that make us a lesser club? Does it somehow mean us as fans in Manchester or wherever you're watching, does it mean we don't count? No, it doesn't. It obviously clearly doesn't. It's just literally dick measuring, and it's ultimately incredibly childish. Enjoy football how you want to. Stop giving a shit. Block all these trolls. It's so tiring, and I'm bored of City fans having to answer to this. I wish Pep hadn't brought it to light. I'm not going to dive in on Pep on there, even though I found it frustrating personally. I do think there's an element of I don't want to criticize unless I categorically know he meant it in how he meant it. If that makes sense by that. It's difficult, but either way, I wish this kind of worms hadn't been opened because it is tiring. It's fucking nonsense. Give it a rest.